On this week's episode of Hockey Inside Out, we discuss the Victor Mete trade request, why the Canadiens are so good with a man down, and Tyler Toffoli having more goals this season than Connor McDavid. All this and more on Hockey Inside Out. My name is Julian McKenzie, back for another edition of Hockey Inside Out. Joining me today are the usual suspects: Montreal Gazette columnist Stu Cowan, Jessica Rusnak of CBC Daybreak Montreal, and former Montreal Canadiens defenseman and NHL assistant coach Rick Green. Let's get right into it with these questions. Tyler Toffoli, the story of the moment. He scored a pair of goals against the Vancouver Canucks on Tuesday. He gets asked about it during the intermission about how he leads the league in goals scored. He says, "It's early." It might not be too early for us to ask this question, though. When was the last time the Montreal Canadiens had a pure goal scorer like Tyler Toffoli?
You're talking about Michael Ryder, right?
Yeah. Michael
Ryder. In Canada did that column a couple of times, and I wrote a column a couple of weeks ago just about the similarities between the two. But yeah, what a natural goal scorer. He's just, that shot. He's got that ability to find open ice. And when he gets the puck, he's got that shot. And I mean, that goal where he undressed Jordy Ben against the Canucks and backhander top shelf. I mean, they were showing that on highlight reels for years. I had laughed at Toffoli's wife on Twitter, tweeted that she was watching it on a rerun over and over and over again. I'm sure some other Habs fans were also. But yeah, it's been a long time since they've had a guy like that. I mean, the Ryder comparison is obviously there. I mean, the number 73 in that also. Sort of hate comparing guys to older players, but I mean, it reminds me in a little bit, just in that Rick might be able to talk. This just sort of like a little bit Steve Shutt, that he can just find open spots and he can score when he gets there. But yeah, what a nice addition to the Canadiens.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the way this guy plays, he doesn't waste a lot of energy. He's not one to get in, bang, and in hack, and he's just very, very intelligent in the selection of where he goes and when he goes to those places to allow him chances to score. And quite impressive to see the hands and his ability to make things happen every time he's on the ice. And wow, Marc Bergevin sure looks pretty good with a signing like that.
Yeah, I can't even really think of the last player that he reminds me of on the Montreal Canadiens. I'm 32 years old, so maybe go back to Stéphane Richer, who I didn't really see play with the Canadiens. So it's hard to say, and I think that just shows that this franchise has been desperately looking for a player like that Stu, you mentioned, will be on the highlight reels for years to come. And that's one of the reasons why you watch sports, is you want to have those incredible moments that you scratch your head and say, how did this guy do this? And it's just been so amazing so early on in the season for him to be able to show what he's able to do and give Habs fans a reason to tune in every single night, which in years prior, I think they had no reason to want to tune in to watch another devastating loss.
You're making me feel old there, just saying you never saw Stéphane Richer play. Richer and Max Pacioretty were two big guys that could score with that big shot. They could score from anywhere in the offensive zone. Ryder, Toffoli to be a little bit closer to the net to score, I think. But he's got that wicked shot though from in close, and that backhander we saw the other night was really, really impressive. It is kind of hard to find somebody that he reminds me of from recent years anyway. But again, imagine a Canadian. The last time a Canadian player led the NHL in goal scoring, it was Guy Lafleur.
That's a long time. And I'm 26 years old. I've never seen a Montreal Canadiens team that's been able to score as much as they have players pretty much on almost every line who can contribute offensively. And if you're saying that, if you're mentioning Guy Lafleur and all this, like, that's insane to me that the Montreal Canadiens, for whatever reason, an illustrious franchise as they are, it's been like so long since they've had a goal scorer quite like a Tyler Toffoli. I think that's mind-blowing to me.
I haven't even had a guy finish in the top 10 in scoring since Mats Naslund in 1986.
Yeah, and let's hope that he has scoring bonuses versus other teams other than just Vancouver.
I'm sure there's a lot of other GMs kicking him.
It's just like, what's the deal here? He just finds every game to hurt Vancouver. I mean, he obviously is not happy with him and really wants to drive home his message that, hey, You let me go, well, you're going to pay for it.
I'm sure
he surely is doing that.
I'm sure there's some other teams kicking themselves because it was Marc Bergevin didn't spend a ton of money to get him, and the production's been there so far.
Yeah, the reports going out with Toffoli were that he was out there for how many days on the free agent market, and maybe he probably had to bring down his asking price. So a lot of GMs probably kicking themselves, and I'm sure Jim Benning from the Vancouver Canucks is among those general managers. Let's move on to the next question here. The Montreal Canadiens have already matched their total number of shorthanded goals from last year. That's 6, by the way. Of course, now in much less time. Artturi Lehkonen and Tyler Toffoli, there's that name again, both have a pair of shorthanded goals, as the Canadiens have just shown that they've been able to score goals with a man down. Panelists, how do you explain the Canadiens being able to score as many shorthanded goals as they've done this season?
I think they've just been more aggressive. That in the past, when they were on the penalty kill, they were very passive. They were watching. You could almost tell when the goal is coming because they're not being aggressive enough, and the other team knew that. And now the Canadiens have been off to a great start, being more aggressive when they're on the PK, and that leads to opportunities that they've been able to capitalize on. So I think it's really the mindset and the kind of pressure that they're putting on the opposing team when they're down a man.
I agree with you, Jess, because if you look at the aggressiveness up ice versus a passive approach, they will force the opposition to not allow them to get any type of breakout, coming out of their zone. And when you've got speed like the Canadiens have, whether it's Evans or it's got Byron, I mean, these kind of guys make things really difficult on the opposition because they're coming at them in first wave, second wave. They're having short shifts, so they're very, very energized. And they're not afraid to go for it, obviously, when they turn the puck over and, make things happen on the shorthanded side. And I see a big difference in their aggressive play that is keeping the opposition, off guard and concerned about the possibility that they can score shorthanded.
Yeah, Jake Evans spoke about it the other day. Also, the fact they just have so many guys who can penalty kill. They have 7 forwards that Claude Julien can use as penalty killers. And Rick, as you mentioned, the speed they have, Byron and Toffoli's, we were talking about Toffoli earlier. He's not the fastest guy, but how many pure goal scorers in the NHL kill penalties also? He's a rarity. Claude Julien is using him on the power play, 5-on-5, penalty kill. That just shows you how smart he is as a hockey player, apart from his ability to put the puck in the net. So Jake Evans, I had asked him, I said, are you guys actually going on the ice killing penalties thinking we're going to score? And he said, no, defense is always your first thought, but if there's a chance there, we're going to take it. And we've seen that this year, just the amount of breakaways that they get shorthanded and they're putting in. It is remarkable. 6 shorthanded goals in the first 10 games, and they had 6 in 71 games last year. It really is remarkable.
It is pretty wild to see. And as you guys were talking about aggression, I thought of Artturi Lehkonen's chance against the Canucks the other night, just being aggressive, literally muscling a puck off a player before scoring. I still can't believe this team has been as good as they've been on the penalty kill. It's just been extremely entertaining to watch. There's a lot to like about this year's Montreal Canadiens team. But there's one player who seems as if he might want a change of scenery. As we move on to our next question, we saw a number of reports and confirmations over the weekend on Victor Mete's trade request. His agent Darren Ferris confirming to a few people, and I'm not going to humble brag here, but I'm one of those people who confirmed to that Victor Mete wants out of Montreal. Mete declined to speak about it earlier this week during his media availability, and now after sitting out the first few games of the year, he finds himself playing in the last 2 games against the Vancouver Canucks. Panelists, do you think Victor Mete has a future with the Montreal Canadiens? And did his agent's comments during the weekend force Claude Julien to put him in the lineup?
The power of an NHL agent, right? I mean, Claude Julien said it had nothing to do with his decision to put Victor Mete in the lineup. I don't think I believe Claude on that one. And Victor Mete is, he was asked about it after the game, and his silence spoke volumes. I mean, agents speak for the players. His agent wouldn't put that out there without talking with Victor about it first. So you can understand why Mete would be frustrated. He's gone from a first-pairing defenseman on this team to a healthy scratch, which also shows you how much this Canadiens team has improved. I think he would want out of here. I think he realizes that, he's getting bumped down. They also got Cale Fleury coming up behind him. He wants to go somewhere he can play. He's only got a 1-year contract, $735,000. So he's at that point where, you know, you're not playing, you have a 1-year contract, you can get forgotten about pretty quick, and your NHL career can end before you know it. So, you know, he was on the ice for 3 of the 5 goals the Canucks scored in those 2 games. He didn't look fantastic. And part of me wonders if they're not maybe trying to showcase Mete to trade him. Because for me, taking Romanov out of the lineup so early in his career, I wonder about that. I wonder about what kind of impact it might have on the kid's confidence going forward.
Well, I think Mete obviously wants to play, and now he's getting a real reading on whether or not he fits into the plans of the Montreal Canadiens. And like you said, Stu, he's got a 1-year contract, and he's trying to expose himself to the point where he wants to draw some attention and get a little more job security. But I'm not sure if he fits into the depth chart as far as a regular goes. I mean, I have to give him credit that he did do okay. Does he bring the type of ingredients to that core that they have back there that the management would like to see more on a regular basis? I'm not sure about that. So he's a small guy. He skates well. I don't know if he's going to bring enough to allow him to be a regular. And obviously, if that's the case, it's in the best interest of everybody to move him along to another organization.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think that Victor Mete is necessarily going to be with the Montreal Canadiens much longer. It just kind of seems like one of those situations that they were able to add some depth on the defense, and unfortunately Victor Mete no longer had that spot that he used to have, and he's not happy about it. He wants more playing time, and if the Canadiens can get something for Victor Mete, well, that will benefit them. But definitely his agent confirming that he's looking to find a spot somewhere else shows that he's unhappy, and usually in a situation like this, that's kind of a time to see where he could go, what you can get. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's no longer with the Montreal Canadiens, you know, in the next few months or weeks.
Yeah, and Marc Bergevin has a history of sort of taking things personally when dealing with player contracts, etc. And I'm sure Marc Bergevin was not very happy that Victor Mete rocked the boat on a team that was really rolling. Everything was positive, everything's great, everybody's excited about the Canadiens, and then boom, Mete's agent comes out and says the kid wants out. And it's not like a star player coming out. It's not like Pierre-Luc Dubois in Columbus saying, I want out. This is a guy who's in a healthy scratch and decides to rock the boat a little bit. So I'm sure that did not sit very well with Marc Bergevin. He said to Pierre LeBrun of TSN that he was not going to trade him. But why would he say he was going to trade him if he is going to trade him? That would only lower his market value. So I have a feeling Victor Mete's days in Montreal might be numbered.
Yeah, I mean, you know what, the agents, you have to be careful here. I think, you know, Victor Mete is supposed to be a really nice kid, and I don't see him as a type that's going to really disturb the dressing room because it's you know, it's not working out the way he'd like it to work out. The agent comes forward because obviously he's looking at probably more money for him and a better environment, et cetera, et cetera. And sometimes he steps on a lot of toes, the agents do, and causes problems. But it's going to be interesting moving forward. But I don't know whether or not it's a real must move by the Montreal Canadiens to move him, just to move him, because I don't think he's going to be a disruption if he can keep his agent quiet.
The one of Vancouver writers told me that he thought the Canucks might have interest in Mete, which, you know, playing back-to-back games against the Canucks might make sense if they were showcasing him.
Well, judging by the way their defense is playing, he would be,
yeah,
you know, moving up the chart easily if he was to go there.
Oh, man. I could think of a whole bunch of different teams in the NHL who could use a defenseman. So time will have to tell with Victor Mete whether or not his future will be with the Montreal Canadiens or with another organization. Let's talk about another young player in this organization. We actually kind of mentioned him a little bit off the top. Jake Evans. He's a fourth liner who's been gaining more and more trust from the coaching staff, and he's even been used against some of the opposing team's best players. We can all harken back to when Jake Evans was playing minutes against Connor McDavid back when the Canadiens were playing against the Edmonton Oilers. Here's a pretty interesting question for you all. If Jake Evans continues to improve, could he render Phillip Danault expendable?
But in my opinion, I would say yes. I'm quite impressed with Jake Evans, the way he's grabbed a hold of the opportunity to play both, you know, offensively and defensively. Very, very responsible, great speed, is making great strides as far as his overall play goes at the NHL level. And he's a worker and he's hungry. And, you got to give him full marks. And if it comes down to contract problems with Danault, I would have no problem with a young kid like Jake Evans stepping in there and doing the job, because I've been quite impressed with his work ethic and his overall play.
Yeah, I really like Phillip Danault as a player and as a person. He's just a great guy to deal with, but he's not doing himself any favors with the start. He still doesn't have a goal after 10 games. I think Jake Evans now is a fourth line center. He's gaining confidence. He's also getting much better in the faceoff circle. You look at his faceoff numbers every game; they keep getting better. I think the Canadiens might reach a point where they might be comfortable to bump him up to be a third line center, which is the highest that Phillip Danault is going to be able to go right now on this team, because there's no doubt that Suzuki and Kotkaniemi are number 1 and number 2 going forward. So if you bump Jake Evans up to the third center role, then is Ryan Poehling ready to step in and be a fourth line center? That's something you got to think of. And they're going to be a salary cap crunch after this season again. That would free up a lot of money. Maybe if they want to keep Thomas Tatar or whatever else they want to do moving forward. But yeah, Phillip Danault, as I said, I really like him as a player. I like him as a person, but he's struggling. Maybe the weight of it being a contract year, that report that he turned down a 6-year, $30 million offer. I think Danault's also a guy. I don't think he's motivated only by money. He doesn't strike me as that kind of guy. I think he wants to go somewhere where he can be at least a number 2 center. So that might have factored into his thinking that maybe I'll go somewhere else, maybe a little bit less money than what Marc Bergevin offered me, but I'll be able to be a number 2 center going forward.
And I think for the Montreal Canadiens, from a management point of view, this is a good situation that you have Jake Evans playing the way that he has been, and you have Phillip Danault, who has a report that he turned down the contract extension. He wants, a little bit more role, and if they can't give it to him here, it's not like it's an empty hole that they can't fill. So I think that's a great thing. With Jake Evans, the thing that's impressed me is that he just kind of quietly came on the Montreal Canadiens. He wasn't that player that everyone was talking about when he was drafted, when he was with Laval, and then when he started to play some games with the Canadiens, it was like, who is this kid? He's a great player. He's shown that he can do it consistently, and I would love to see him get that opportunity.
A 7th-round draft pick. The Canadiens take a lot of heat, their scouting department, for their draft record, and their first-round record has been brutal. But they've found a lot of diamonds in the rough in later rounds. Brendan Gallagher, 4th round. This kid is 7th round. Caden Primo, a 7th round. But it just shows you that hard work. Nothing's come easy for this kid, Jake Evans, getting to the NHL. So kudos to him for I think I asked him with this. That staying at the University of Notre Dame for the 4 full years really helped him. He was a captain there. He's a leader. He's a really smart kid when you talk to him. So good for him. It's nice to see a kid like that, earn his spot in the NHL.
And you have to give credit to the management for being patient with a kid like this and allowing him to make mistakes and yet still allowing him to log some minutes. And he's responded, in a positive way to be very, very helpful in what he brings to the table in 4th line or possibly 3rd line. But like I said, he's got a lot of upside as a young kid that's handling himself very well to date.
And one of the reasons he's getting better at faceoffs is Phillip Danault, who's been working with the kids on faceoffs after every practice. So Phillip Danault has been like another coach for these kids who are playing center.
One coach who deserves some credit for the development of Jake Evans is Joel Bouchard out in Laval. You got to remember the American Hockey League affiliate once upon a time for the Montreal Canadiens wasn't so good to prospects, and Jake Evans, a 7th-round draft choice, turning out to be a pretty good player for this organization. Now, can you imagine a scenario here where 2 foundational players in Jake Evans and Caden Primo, if Evans ascends to that point and stays on this team and Primo eventually gets called up, 2 guys drafted in the 7th round. So big kudos to the scouting department, of course, by the Montreal Canadiens for them to go out and get those players. I want to move on to our last question here. Stu, you actually mentioned it. In terms of a Montreal Canadiens player, it's been a long time since they finished in the top 10 in the National Hockey League in scoring. Mats Naslund was the last guy to do it in 1985, 1986 with 110 points. Of course, I was not alive for that. Is this the year a Montreal Canadiens player, maybe it's Tyler Toffoli, is this the year a Montreal Canadiens player finishes in the top 10 in NHL scoring?
It's really early. I mean, even Tyler Toffoli said that in a TV interview. He said it's early, and I think I need to do a drink now. I think, Jess, right? Is that,
Yeah, that's it. Got to get shot glasses now.
That's it. But the possibility is there. I mean, just we're talking about Tyler Toffoli earlier. Just the shot he has, and the good players. Nick Suzuki is a setup guy. Suzuki has points in 9 of the first 10 games. So the possibility is there. It's still early. It's nice to think that there actually is a possibility for a Canadiens player to get into the top 10 in scoring. When was the last time we could even say that? A long way to go, so I'm going to say a solid maybe.
I mean, you're obviously hopeful that these guys are going to continue the way they're playing and finding ways to score. Toffoli, Anderson. I mean, these guys are making it happen, and there's no reason why we would think that they're not going to continue. Yes, it's a grinding schedule. It's a fairly tough year, but these guys have all the tools to score, and obviously they're using them and making things happen. And it's obviously a huge bonus for the team.
And I wonder if that change of schedule that they're dealing with now, if it will be more beneficial in a way, because you kind of have that baseball schedule where you stay in a city rather than having a lot of travel, and maybe that could be a little bit easier for some of these players. We'll find out at the end of the regular season how they were able to adjust to it. Was it easier than what we're used to seeing? But maybe that could help them keep it up as well, having some more rest, some less travel to deal with, and it might help them, but we'll see as the season goes on.
Imagine if that player ended up being defenseman Jeff Petry.
Yeah, I thought about that.
He's an offensive force. He's right up there in the scoring leaders. And, talking about Marc Bergevin's offseason moves, the acquisition of Joel Edmondson, what an impact he's had on Jeff Petry, having that solid stay-at-home defenseman, Rick Green type of defenseman that allows his partner to be as offensive force as Jeff Petry is. I mean, Joel Edmondson's leading the NHL in plus minus at plus 14 and Petry's plus 12. So Petry's performance has as much to do with having a solid Rick Green type defense partner as anything else.
Well, you look at the way Edmondson plays. I mean, you don't know how much you miss him until he's not in the lineup. Hopefully that's not going to happen, but he obviously is complimenting Petry. He's your basic defenseman. He doesn't make many mistakes. He keeps things simple. The puck is moving. He's in position defensively all the time. And man, oh man, this guy is a huge, huge part of the defensive core back there, because he's able to shut down anybody on the offensive side through his intelligence and his great defensive play. So what a nice addition to the club.
It's almost better when you don't notice him. I can't remember how many times I've thought of people who've said, like, hey, I haven't really seen Joel Edmondson out there. And that's almost one of the best compliments you can give. If a guy is not doing any mistakes out there and not being noticed for that, that's a huge asset to him. Am I right?
Especially for a defensive defenseman. When you got off and nobody noticed you played, then you never coughed it up. You never made a mistake. Things are good.
He doesn't panic. He shows pretty good composure under pressure, and he keeps the game real simple. And you got to give the guy marks for understanding what he needs to do and how to play at his best. And that's keep it simple and move the puck, and let those guys with the higher skill. Like I used to say to Petr Svoboda, my partner, after watching him with his face crushed against the glass at 165 pounds every night. And finally, when I saw his nose was rearranged from the right to the left after the 5th time, I said, Peter, I'm going to make a deal for you. I said, from now on, you don't go in the corners. I'll go in the corners and I'll give you the puck, and you skate like a madman that you do so well. So we came down to a really good agreement with that. And, thank goodness Peter was able to get his nose fixed, and, it's all a good ending to the story.
There was never a player who skated with his head up better than Peter. I guess maybe you thought
in all my years playing, I could never understand a kid like him, because he was fearless, even at 165 pounds, but he didn't care about getting his face like smashed against the glass, and everybody liked to do that to him. So I mean, I I felt terrible for him, but I finally told him as a kid, I said, listen, you want to hang in for a while, you better change your mindset, because get out of the corners. Just do yourself a big favor. Get out of the corners.
Oh man, poor his nose. Jeez, that's such a good story.
That's great stories.
I'm telling you, man, we need that segment. That's going to do it for this week's episode of Hockey Inside Out. If you have a question you'd like to see our panelists discuss, please add it to the comment section below and visit hockeyinsideout.com to check out our full episode and join the discussion.